This past weekend was pretty uneventful for college football as a whole. That is, unless you played in the Pac-12. Yeah, the Pac-12 definitely shook up the top 25. Here's my top 25 rankings after week 11 of the college football season. Before we get to today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are that you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel. So make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. I'm posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. Staying at number 1 this week is Georgia, who moved to 10-0 on this season with their 45-19 victory over Mississippi State. The Bulldogs were actually hanging around in this game as they trailed by only 5 points entering the half, but Georgia outscored them 28-7 in the second half. Ohio State dominated Indiana, picking up the 56-14 victory. CJ Stroud threw for 300 yards with 5 passing touchdowns as the Buckeyes rushed for nearly 350 yards with 3 different players rushing in a touchdown. Michigan moved to 10-0 with their dominating 31-point victory over Nebraska. JJ McCarthy had 3 touchdowns for the game, and Blake Corum rushed for over 160 yards with a score. Michigan held Nebraska to only 8 first downs and only 146 yards of total offense. After being one of the top defensive teams in all of college football last season, Michigan has been arguably the best defensive team in the nation in 2022. TCU moved to 10-0 on the season as they went into Texas and picked up the 7-point victory. It wasn't a pretty game by the TCU offense as they had only 2 touchdowns and fewer than 300 yards of total offense, but it was the Horned Frogs defense that really won the game for them. They held the Longhorns to only 1 touchdown, including only 14 first downs, fewer than 200 yards of total offense, including only 28 yards on the ground. Tennessee bounced back nicely after losing last week, defeating Missouri 66-24. Hendon Hooker had another solid game as he totaled over 400 yards with 4 total touchdowns. After having the worst offensive showing last week against Georgia, Tennessee responded by having over 700 yards of total offense, the most in a game in Tennessee history. It looked like USC would be on potential upset watch after they were losing to Colorado entering the second quarter, but they quickly turned things around and took down the Buffaloes 55-17. Caleb Williams threw for nearly 300 yards with 3 passing touchdowns while adding 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. After what happened in the Pac-12 this weekend, it looks like USC is the conference's best shot of sending a team to the college football playoff. Coming off of last weekend's thrilling win against Alabama, LSU was on upset watch all game against Arkansas. They trailed after the first quarter and led by only 3 points entering halftime. Plus, after a touchdown by Arkansas in the fourth quarter, LSU led by only 3 points, but their defense stepped up big time to avoid the upset. The MVP of the game for the Tigers was Harold Perkins Jr. He totaled 8 tackles for the game, including 4 sacks, a pass deflection, and a quarterback hurry. Had it not been for his performance on defense, LSU probably would have lost this game to Arkansas. Alabama responded with a close victory on the road at number 11 Ole Miss. Things weren't looking good for the Tide as they trailed at the half and were tied with the Rebels entering the fourth quarter, but their defense was able to step up in the biggest moments in the fourth quarter to pull off the victory. Although Alabama was officially eliminated from the SEC title game, they still have a chance to finish their season strong. After losing last week to Notre Dame, Clemson responded with a nice 15-point victory over Louisville. The Tigers had over 400 yards of total offense and had 26 first downs for the game. Meanwhile, on defense, they were able to limit this high-powered Louisville offense by forcing 3 turnovers. Although the loss hurt Clemson last week, they're still 9-1 and they still have an outside shot of reaching the college football playoff. Utah picked up another solid victory by defeating Stanford by 35 points. Cameron Rising had 250 yards with 3 touchdowns, while the Utes rushed for nearly 300 yards as a team. Meanwhile, on defense, the Utes held Stanford to only 7 points and only 9 first downs. They also held the Cardinals to 22 rushing yards on 26 attempts. While USC, Oregon, and UCLA have been getting all the attention this season, Utah has quietly put together a really impressive campaign. It wasn't pretty, but North Carolina picked up yet another victory as they moved to 9-1 on the season. they defeated Wake Forest by 2 points. Drake May continues to be one of the top quarterbacks in all of college football. He threw for 450 yards with 3 passing touchdowns while leading the Tar Heels with 70 yards on the ground and a rushing score. The Tar Heels are undefeated in conference play and they're 9-1 on the season, still having a really outside shot of potentially sneaking their way into the college football playoff. Penn State had overall their best game of the season as they took down Maryland 30-0. Nicholas Singleton led the way for the Nittany Lions as he rushed for 122 yards with 2 rushing scores. The Penn State defense held Maryland to 0 points. This was a Maryland team that was averaging more than 30 points a game entering the contest. Here's where I have Oregon falling as they were upset at home to Washington. The offense did enough in this game for the Ducks to win as they had 600 yards of total offense, including more than 300 yards on the ground. For the game, they had 32 first downs, 9 more than Washington. Bo Nix had another solid game as he had 340 yards and 3 total touchdowns for the game. But like I mentioned, some questionable play calls from Oregon cost them the game at the end, and their playoff chances were completely shot. I have Washington just 1 spot behind Oregon after that impressive victory. Quietly, Washington has put together a really good 2022 season as they're now 8-2 on the season. When looking at their schedule, I still have no idea how my Arizona State Sun Devils knocked off the Huskies earlier in the year. This is one of the best offenses in all of college football, and it's largely due to Michael Penix Jr. For the game, he threw for over 400 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Although they're likely not going to be playing in the Pac-12 title game, Washington still has a chance to finish their season with 10 or 11 victories. After starting the season 7-0, Ole Miss has now lost 2 of their last 3 games. They had a close contest against Alabama, but their offense just couldn't do anything in the second half, especially the fourth quarter, as they fell to the Tide by 6 points. Quinshon Judkins is the best player on Ole Miss, as he had another fantastic showing as he totaled 150 yards with 2 touchdowns. But outside of him, nobody on this offense was able to do much to give Ole Miss the lead when it mattered most. Well, it looks like UCF is making their case of being the best Group of 5 team in 2022. They went on the road to number 17 Tulane and picked up the impressive 7-point victory. John Reese Plumlee had one of the best games of his career as he threw for 130 yards with a passing touchdown while rushing for nearly 200 yards on the ground with 2 rushing scores. UCF is now 8-2 on the season, and after the upcoming college football playoff rankings, they're likely going to be the highest ranked Group of 5 team. UCLA literally had a chance of reaching the college football playoff if they just won out. Now, I know they potentially could have lost in the Pac-12 title game or potentially next week to USC, but I don't think anyone was expecting them to lose at home to Arizona as a 3-touchdown favorite. Well, they lost to the 3-win Arizona Wildcats by 6 points. Early on, this looked like it'd be a struggle for the Bruins as they trailed by 14 at the end of the first quarter and by a touchdown entering the half. UCLA was able to battle back, but Arizona was just too much for them as they held on for the victory. I mean, seriously, all they had to do was beat Arizona, and this would have been a top 10 matchup between them and the Trojans next week. Kansas State responded to last week's loss very well as they went on the road to Baylor and picked up the 31-3 victory. Will Howard threw for 200 yards with 3 passing touchdowns, while Deuce Vaughn added 150 total yards with a touchdown. With 2 games left this season, Kansas State just has to go undefeated to face TCU in the Big 12 title game. Florida State just continues to impress this season as they defeated a pretty solid Syracuse team 38-3 on the road. Jordan Travis threw for 150 yards with 3 passing touchdowns, while adding a touchdown on the ground as well. Meanwhile, Trey Benson rushed for nearly 200 yards, averaging 9 yards a carry. I know we talk about Clemson and North Carolina being the best teams in the ACC, but quietly, Florida State is 7-3, and they have a chance of winning 10 games this season. Notre Dame looked like they had this game put out of reach as they led Navy 35-13 entering the half. But they were outscored 19-0 in the second half as the midshipmen really made this an interesting game. Still, the Irish picked up their 7th win of the season. It was their 4th consecutive victory and their 7th win in their last 8 games. Cincinnati won a thrilling game over East Carolina as they won by 2 points. Cincinnati is now 8-2 on the season, and if they win their next 2 games, they'll play UCF in the American Conference title game. And whoever wins that game will likely be the Group of 5 representative in a New Year's Six bowl game. team. Coastal Carolina is quietly putting together yet another solid season. They took down Southern Miss by 3 points and moved to 9-1 on the season. They're one of a handful of teams that only have one loss in all of college football so far this year. Oregon State is yet another Pac-12 team that is flying under the radar this season. They took down Cal at home, defeating them by 28 points to move to 7-3 on the season. If Oregon State just wins one more game, it'll be their most wins in a season since 2012. If they win both of their games to close out the season and win their bowl game, it'll be their first double-digit win season since 2006. Considering they were one of the worst teams in all of college football from 2015 through 2020, the turnaround from this Beavers team has been fantastic to see over the last few years. After losing 2 of their first 3 games to start the season, UTSA has now won 7 consecutive games as they're 8-2 on the season and undefeated in conference play. They took down Louisiana Tech 51-7 this weekend. Frank Harris threw for 200 yards with a passing touchdown, while the Roadrunners as a team rushed for nearly 300 yards with 5 rushing scores. We're going to wrap up our top 25 with yet another group of 5 team in the Troy Trojans. They won a close game against Army as they won by 1 point. For the Trojans, they're now 8-2 on the season. The Sun Belt has a number of solid teams this season, and Troy is one of the best. When determining this final spot, I had it narrowed between Troy and another Sun Belt team in South Alabama who's also 8-2. But overall, I decided to give the slight edge to Troy. Well, that wraps up my top 25 after week 11. Let me know in the comment section what you think about the rankings. Was there a team I had ranked too high, or a team that was ranked too low, or was there a team not on the list that should have been included? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know down below. Before you leave, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos every day during the rest of the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that confusing YouTube algorithm, and it helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.